Hello, welcome to Should I Buy This Game? Featuring Near and Far. My name is Christine, and in this video I'll give you a brief description on how the game is played and then share a few things I may like or dislike about the game to help you decide if you want to add Near and Far to your collection. Here we have the game Near and Far, and this game is a follow-up to Above and Below. However, this game definitely packs a lot more of a punch. I'm going to start by talking about the adventurers. Now, similar to Above and Below, they have their little tiles here, but you don't need beds and you don't need to refresh them. They're always ready to go. And you'll notice that they have different benefits. So there's the hearts, and that's how much life you have when you go on adventures. The little hands are skills, and you can use those at the farm to get bread in the mine. And you use these also when you do quests. The eyeball is a search, and when you go adventuring, you use that to collect resources, coins and jewels. Over on this one, though, you'll see there's a sword, and that's combat that you use for dueling and in your quests. Now, this guy here has a shield, and when you go out on the adventure, you might come across threats, but if you have the shield, you can walk right past them. This one is a nice combination because you get 3 hearts, you get a search, a combat, and a skill. And then this one here you'll notice has an arrow, and that's another movement. So you start with 2 movements, this will give you a 3rd, and then there's some birds that will give you a few more movements. So that's always nice to have 2. So when you're picking your adventurers, you'll also notice they're in different factions. There's a few here. I think the yellow one is missing. There's 4 different factions. And so you can only have 1 adventurer from each faction out on your adventure at one time, unless of course you have a card that gives you an extra benefit that you can switch it up and have 2 of one. But for the most part, you can only have 1 from each faction. So when you're picking your adventurers, you want to look at, do you want a lot of hearts? And that gives you more life when you're out on the adventure. A combination of swords in the hands for the skill, because if you're doing the quest, you're going to need those. This will get you goods. This gets you movement. So you want to have a bit of a variety in your little party that's going on the adventure. Now, the other thing I want to mention about these tiles is on the back sides, this is for the one game, on this side, they are tokens that can be used in Above and Below. And these would be put up on top of the board above the regular villagers. But check this out. This one, they all come with a bed. You don't have to get beds for them. So they're always ready to play and fight. This one has 4 lanterns. So if you go out in Above and Below into the caves, you're guaranteed 4 lanterns, which is pretty great. This one has 3 lanterns, but then some of them may not have as many lanterns or any at all, but you'll still be able to use them for building and getting more adventurers and villagers in Above and Below. So it's sort of cool how these tiles are double-sided if you have both of the games. I'd love a set of these tiles for my game because I've actually rented this game. I don't own it. So I wish I could just get the extra tiles for Above and Below. And the one last thing I want to mention about the adventures is if you get a combination of adventures as well as faction tokens, and if you get 4 in one faction, then you can get the chiefs, and the chiefs will give you 5 points at the end of the game. So it's a combination of your adventures and your tokens. Once you have 4, you're able to get the chief. Now I'm going to talk about everything you can do in town. And when you're going to go in town, you get your little person and you just put it where you want to do the action. So in the town hall, this is where you trade. And so you can have a faction token you've received from a quest, and you can do it to trade for goods. So in this case, I have 1. It's worth 6. So I can get any combination. I could get 2 jewels and a coin. I could get 2 coins and 1 jewel. I could get 2 coins and 2 bread. Any combination that would equal 6. And for the different factions, they're worth different amounts. Now, the opposite is true. If you want to buy a faction, you could trade in 3 coins to get the faction. And you might want to do that if you needed one more to get the chief. So that is where you can trade. The other thing is there are artifact cards. And if you can buy this card, you would get this point. But if you cannot pay for this card, at the end of the game, you will lose a point. So sometimes you might want to come here to discard of a card. So at the end of the game, you aren't down a point. Now this has to do with the reputation. And you can trade a coin or a jewel to go up and down the reputation. So if I wanted to gain 2 points on reputation, I could trade in 2 coins and a jewel. But if I wanted 2 coins, I could always go down by 2 points on the reputation. So it works both ways. Next, we have the saloon, and this is where you come to get an adventurer. So you would just put your person here. Many people can be here at the same time, and you have to pay the amount on the bottom of the adventurer to get it. Now, you also have the option of paying a bread or a food item to refresh this. So if you're looking for a certain faction and it's not here, you can pay the piece of food and get 5 new village adventurers to pick from. Next here is the stables, and this is where we get our bird. And this bird does 2 things. 1, it gives us another movement, and 2, it allows us to have a treasure card. If we don't have a bird, you can't have a treasure card. When we look at the player mat, I'll show you where that fits in. But you come here and you pay food to get a bird. This is just straight up. It's the general store. You can either get a coin or you can get 4 artifact cards that I showed you earlier. This is the farm, and for every skill you have in your party, you would get a piece of bread. So if you had 2 hands, you get 2 pieces of food. If you had 4 hands, you could get 4 pieces of food. These are the treasure cards, and they'll give you a bonus. So this one is gain 1 food when you leave town. But there's a whole bunch of different ones. Some of them will give you +1 to quest rolls. Some of them will just give you a skill, a heart. Where are some of the other ones? Oh, this is gain 2 hearts when you build a camp on a trade route space. So that's good for down there. So there's different ones. You get swords. So these are always good to have. You're limited to the number of birds you have, and that is limited to 3. However, if you get more, you can always trade out ones you have and discard one that you no longer want. And then this is the mine. And what you do is you come here with your tents, and depending on how many hands you have, the skill, the first person puts a tent on number 1, and they would receive a coin. But as you work it up, you're able to fill it in. If you were here, if all this had been filled in, you're now able to get 2 coins. If you could make it all the way here, you get a coin and a gem. So you place your tent and get whatever it is, but you have to do it in order. So it's like 1, and the next person would have to come to 2 or 1, and then you just connect. And those are everything you can do in town. This was my player board by the end of the game. I had my starting adventure, which is my cat, and then I only actually got 3 adventures, but I made sure I chose one with the shield, a skill, and a couple swords. And I also went for the big hearts, so I had 10 hearts amongst my adventurers. I also have some artifact cards that I was able to buy, and so it gives me another heart. I have a bunch of swords. I have the ability to re-roll when I quest, and another skill. I have 3 birds. That gives me 3 movements. And I also have 3 cards. And this one, I gain food if I complete a quest, and then I have another heart and another movement. So in total, I have 12 hearts. I start with 2 movement, plus 3 is 5, plus that one is 6 movements. And this is all important when we move on to the map to do the quest. So the last thing I'm going to show you is how you go on an adventure. So this is the first map in the book, is the Glogo Caverns. And you always start in the main town that's like this. And this means you're going to refresh your hearts. So I had 13 hearts and my counter will be on 13. Now I'm going to move to this position here. I had 6 movement and it's going to be 1, 2, 3. So what I would do is when I move here, the 1 movement is fine. But now I have a threat. Now, although I personally had a shield, I'm just going to show you how a threat is done. So you have the next card, and this is a threat level of 6. However, I do have 5 swords, so I know I'm going to win. I got 6 just on my die. So as long as I get a 6, I win. And what you do is you then keep this, but you have to put one of your tents on it. And then at the end of the game, in this case, it's worth 2 points. So I defeated him. I'm going to put him aside. So that means I'm allowed to pass. Now, because I've now passed over what's considered an empty space, I would spend 1 heart to move over an empty space. So I just move it down 1. But I haven't made it to my destination yet. I still want to go there. So if I do another threat, they were a little out of order. Here we go, number 7. Remember, I still have 5 swords. I got another 6, so we're fine. However, it cost me another tent. So I'm really going low on my tent. And I finally get to where I am. So that would cost me another heart for an empty space. So I went over 2 empty spaces, so it cost me 2 hearts. To put a tent up here, to put a tent anywhere, cost you 3 hearts. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. And now I'm able to put my tent there. And because it is a jewel, however number of search symbols I have, I get that many jewels. So in my case, I had 2 search symbols and I would receive 2 jewels to add to my personal mat. Now I just want to show you an alternate path I could have taken. So say I want to come to here. I have 6 movement, but it's only 3. So I would go 1, 2, 3. Now, because there were tents here, they were not open spaces. So I did not spend any hearts to get there. I passed over a treasure chest. So I would get a new one and I could decide if I want to keep it or keep the ones I have and discard this one. And then since I'm here, I can build a tent. And again, it costs 3 hearts. I would just put my little tent there and it's a coin. I have 2 searches, 2 eyes, so I would get 2 coins. So if the space has a tent, you do not pay a heart. But say if I was to go here, if the space was empty, I would have to pay a heart. Now, one other thing is, say there was this tent here, and there's a tent on either side of the threat, then you do not have to do the threat. One last thing I want to show you on the maps is here we have the trades. So in this case, there's a blue tent on this one and this one. It's the matching. So the blue player would receive 9 points. Whereas on the chili peppers, we have a blue tent here. And way over here, we have the red tent. So if we go back here, each player would only receive 3 points. And if there was a case where there was a tent on one, but not the other, then nobody receives any points. Both ends, both images have to be covered by a tent for anyone to receive any points. Now I'm going to talk about a few things we really enjoyed about the game. And the first off is that this game is huge, like I mentioned at the beginning. This map here is just your first adventure. After this, you can go into a campaign mode. And there are 10 more maps available in this book. Now, if you complete a campaign mode, you can go into character mode. And your character can go on an adventure and you can find out more about your character and reuse these maps. Now, if you've done all that and you've done all the quests over and over again and you still want to play, you can play arcade mode. And then there are cards that will give you more fighting abilities, and you wouldn't use the quest that if at this point you have read them so many times. So that's what I mean by it's huge. You can play this game so many times between the campaign, the mode, character mode, and then the arcade mode. And even if you didn't want to do the campaign mode, you can just trade up a map and play that map for just a single game with some friends. So this game has huge replayability. The next thing I really liked is how they changed up the adventurers. I like how there's different abilities on the different tiles with the different adventurers. And you can see when I showed you my player board, I just had 3 of them, yet I managed to get a lot out of those 3. And so if you pick your adventures wisely, you can play the game with only a handful of them. You don't even need 4. And I like how you don't have to refresh them. They're always ready to fight. Another thing I really like is the fact that you can choose to do what you want to do when you want to do it. There's no set rounds in this game. And you just keep playing the game until all of your 14 tents have been placed on the board. So now I want to talk about a couple of things I didn't like about the game. And the first one being is that in a 2-person game, you use 7 quest books. So on the map, you'll see where in this map, it's like C and A and L. All of these are quest areas. And on the map, there's 16 of them. But in a game, you only use 7. And so I didn't quite understand that. I just feel if somebody lands on C, they should be able to do the quest, even if there isn't a book. So I don't quite understand why we're limited to 7 quests per game. Another thing we found is that the money is very tight in this game. If you come here, you get 1 coin. If you go to the mine, if you're here, you get 1 coin. It's not until you get to number 3 where you can actually get 2 coins. If you go down here, you have to have the cert symbols to receive the coins, and then you're putting a tent here rather than on the trade, where in the end you'll get more points at the end of the game. So you're deciding if you're going to spend a tent there. Or you can come here and trade in your faction tiles to get the coins. And that's what I had to do when I was trying to buy my artifacts before the game ended. And so getting coins can be really tight and tough sometimes. One final thing is I just want to show you the quest book. And so you can see how thick it is. And this holds all the quests for the maps and all the character mode quests. So there is a lot of information in this book. And so overall, as I said, we really did enjoy playing this game. It has so much replayability that you could play it for months and months and months. So let me know in the comments if you have played Near and Far and what you think of this game.